The vacancy at Blackwood Hotel. The first thing Daniel Voss noticed about the Blackwood Hotel was that it had no vacancy sign. That seemed strange. The hotel stood alone beside the highway, 3 miles outside the town of Bellwether, and judging from the number of cars parked beneath the skeletal elm trees, it should have been full. But there was no glowing red vacancy. No vacancy. Nothing at all. Just an old wooden sign hanging from 2 rusted chains. Blackwood Hotel. The letters had once been painted white. Now they looked like old teeth. Daniel slowed his car as rain swept across the windshield. He had been driving for nearly 6 hours. The storm had followed him from the interstate, turning the road black and slick beneath the headlights. His phone had died an hour ago. The radio had become nothing but static. The last gas station he'd passed had been closed. He had considered sleeping in the car. Then he'd seen the hotel. Daniel pulled into the gravel lot. The moment his headlights crossed the building, every light in the hotel seemed to flicker at once. He stopped. For a second, he thought about leaving. Then something moved behind an upstairs window. Pale face. Watching him. Daniel blinked. The window was empty. He laughed nervously. "Great," he muttered. He grabbed his suitcase. "Just what I need." The front door opened before he reached it. An old man stood inside. He was thin, almost painfully so, with silver hair combed straight back from a high forehead. He wore a dark suit, white shirt and black tie. His smile was polite. Too polite. "Evening." Daniel stopped beneath the awning. "Do you have a room?" The old man's smile widened. "We always have a room." Thunder rolled across the hills. Daniel looked back at his car, then at the road. "How much?" $30. Daniel frowned. 30. Cash. "I've got a card." The old man's smile disappeared. For the first time, something cold entered his eyes. "Cash." Daniel reached into his wallet. He had $43. He handed over 30. The old man counted it carefully. "Mr. Voss." Daniel looked up. "I didn't give you my name." "No." The old man handed him a brass key. "Room 17. You'll be comfortable here." Daniel stared at the key. "How did you know my name?" The old man didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the staircase. "Room 17 is upstairs." Daniel followed. The lobby smelled of dust, old wood and something faintly sweet. Flowers. Dead flowers. There were photographs everywhere. Yes. Hundreds of them. Men in suits. Women in dresses. Children. Couples. People standing in front of the hotel over decades. Daniel slowed. The photographs seemed oddly personal. Some showed guests smiling. Others showed them standing beside their cars. One showed a man sleeping in a chair. Daniel stopped. The man looked remarkably like him. Same dark hair. Same narrow nose. Same little scar beside the left eyebrow. Daniel leaned closer. The photograph was dated 1974. "That's impossible." The old man looked over his shoulder. "What's impossible?" Daniel pointed. "That guy." The old man glanced at the photograph. "Oh." He smiled. "Mr. Voss." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Who is he?" The old man continued upstairs. "Your room is at the end of the hall." Daniel followed. He tried to convince himself the photograph was a coincidence. There were millions of people in the world. People looked alike. It happened. The hallway upstairs was long and narrow. Every door was painted black. Room 17 was at the end. Daniel inserted the key. Before he opened the door, he heard something. A soft scratching sound. Behind the wall. Scratch. 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 He froze. "Old pipes," the hotel owner said. Daniel looked back. The old man was standing at the stairs, watching him. Probably. The scratching stopped. Daniel entered his room. It was surprisingly clean. A bed. A small desk. A television. A bathroom. And a framed photograph above the bed. Daniel stared at it. The photograph showed the Blackwood Hotel, taken decades ago. But there was something wrong. A figure stood in the upstairs window. Daniel stepped closer. It was him. Same clothes. Same face. Same expression. He backed away. Someone knocked on the door. Daniel jumped. The old man stood outside. Everything all right? Daniel swallowed. Yeah. The old man looked past him, at the photograph, then smiled. Good. He walked away. Daniel closed the door, locked it, then checked the photograph again. The figure was gone. At 2:13 in the morning, Daniel woke to screaming. A woman. Somewhere downstairs. He sat upright. Silence. Then, a crash. A man's voice. Please. Daniel got out of bed. He stood in the darkness. Another scream. He opened his door. The hallway was empty. A light at the far end flickered. Daniel stepped into the hall. The screaming stopped. He walked toward the stairs. Halfway there, he heard breathing. Behind him. Daniel turned. Nothing. He went downstairs. The lobby was dark. Only moonlight came through the windows. He saw the front desk. Empty. Then he noticed a door behind it. It was slightly open. Daniel pushed it. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. He heard something below, whispering. He took one step, then another. At the bottom was a basement. Old luggage filled the room. Dozens of suitcases. Hundreds. Some were stacked nearly to the ceiling. Daniel opened one. Clothes. Women's clothes. Another. A man's wallet. Another. A child's shoe. Daniel's breathing quickened. He opened another suitcase. Inside was a driver's license. He picked it up. The photograph showed a young man. The name was Daniel Voss. Daniel dropped it. No. He picked it up again. The license had been issued in 1974. He heard footsteps behind him. Slow. Measured. Daniel turned. The old man stood at the bottom of the stairs. He was holding a straight razor. People always want to know what happened to the guests. Daniel backed away. What is this place? The old man smiled. My family has owned this hotel for 91 years. Daniel looked at the suitcases. Where are they? Who? The guests. The old man tilted his head. You've already met some of them. Daniel felt something touch his ankle. He looked down. A pale hand was sticking out from beneath a pile of luggage. He screamed. The old man lunged. Daniel swung the suitcase. It struck the man's head. He fell. Daniel ran. Up the stairs. Through the lobby. Out the front door. Rain hammered his face. He sprinted toward his car. His keys. His keys were gone. Daniel patted his pockets. Nothing. He looked back at the hotel. Every upstairs window was illuminated, and behind every window stood a person, watching. He ran toward the highway. A car appeared through the rain. Daniel waved desperately. The car slowed. Headlights washed over him. Police cruiser. Daniel stumbled toward it. The cruiser stopped. The passenger window lowered. A woman officer looked at him. Sir. Help me. She stepped out. What happened? The hotel. What hotel? Daniel pointed. But there was nothing there. Only trees. Darkness. Rain. The officer stared at him. Sir. Daniel turned. The Blackwood Hotel was gone. He looked back at the officer. That's impossible. She studied him, then looked down at the suitcase he'd been carrying. It was covered in blood. Daniel stared at it. I didn't. The officer opened it. Inside was a woman's body. Her throat had been cut. Daniel screamed. The trial lasted 11 days. They never found the Blackwood Hotel. They never found Daniel's car. They never found the old man. The woman's body was identified as a traveler who had disappeared 3 years earlier. Daniel insisted he had never seen her before. The jury didn't believe him. Neither did the doctors. He was sentenced to life. 20 years later, Daniel was still in prison when a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a photograph. An old photograph. The Blackwood Hotel. Daniel stared at it. The building looked exactly as he remembered, except for one detail. There were 2 figures standing in the upstairs window. Daniel and the old man. Written on the back of the photograph were 6 words. Room 17 is ready again. That night, Daniel heard scratching inside his cell wall. Scratch. 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 He pressed his ear against the concrete. A whisper came through. Mr. Voss. Daniel stepped backward. The lights went out. When they came back on, his cell door was open, and hanging from the lock was a brass key. 17. Behind him, someone began humming, a tune Daniel remembered from the hotel. He turned slowly. An old man stood in the corner, smiling. You've been gone a long time. Daniel couldn't move. The old man raised one finger to his lips. Don't wake the guests. From somewhere far away came the sound of a woman screaming. Then another. Then another. And beneath them all, the slow, patient scratching of something trying to get out of the walls. The hotel at mile 117. The first thing Daniel noticed about the hotel was that there were no roads leading to it. He had been driving for almost 6 hours when the highway disappeared. Not literally. The asphalt was still there beneath his headlights, 2 narrow lanes of cracked black pavement winding through miles of dead forest. But the signs had stopped appearing sometime after sunset, and his GPS had been telling him to make a U-turn for the last 40 minutes. Daniel ignored it. He was too tired to care. The storm had started just after 9. By 11, rain hammered the windshield so hard that the wipers could barely keep up. Lightning flashed between the trees, briefly illuminating crooked trunks and walls of tangled brush. There were no houses, no gas stations, no cell service, nothing. Then, at exactly 11:47 p.m., Daniel saw the hotel. It stood at the end of a long gravel driveway that hadn't been visible until his headlights struck it. The building was enormous, 4 stories tall, maybe 5. It was difficult to tell because the upper floors disappeared into fog. Its architecture belonged to another century. Dark brick, stone columns, enormous windows, a steep roof crowned with rusted iron ornaments. The central entrance was covered by a wide wooden awning. Above the doors, faded gold lettering read, "The Blackwood Hotel." Daniel slowed. There was something immediately wrong with the name. He had never heard of it. And yet it felt familiar. Not familiar in the way a landmark might be familiar. Felt like he'd dreamed about it. He pulled into the driveway. His headlights swept across the parking lot. There were cars. Dozens of them. Old cars. New cars. A rusted pickup from the 70s. A modern SUV. A 1990s station wagon. A black sedan that looked brand new. All of them were covered in rain. None had headlights on. Daniel checked his phone. No service. He looked at the hotel. Every window was dark, except one. A single yellow rectangle glowed on the 4th floor. Daniel stared at it. Something moved behind the curtain. He wasn't sure whether it was a person. He shut off the engine. The silence that followed was enormous. Then his passenger door unlocked. Daniel froze. He hadn't touched it. The lock clicked again. Once. Twice. Then the door slowly swung open. Rain blew into the car. Daniel slammed it shut. His breathing became shallow. "Okay," he whispered. He looked toward the hotel. The front doors were open. They hadn't been open a moment ago. Daniel grabbed his flashlight. He stepped outside. The rain immediately soaked his jacket. He walked toward the entrance. As he crossed the parking lot, he noticed something strange. Every car had its driver's door open. Every single one. Some doors were hanging wide. Others were only slightly ajar. Daniel stopped. He counted them. 23 cars. 23 open driver's doors. He looked back at his own vehicle. His driver's door was open too. Daniel's stomach tightened. He hadn't left it open. He was certain. He turned toward the hotel. The front doors waited. Open. Inviting. Warm yellow light spilled across the wet stone steps. And somewhere inside, a bell rang. Ding. Daniel walked in. The lobby was beautiful. That was the first thing that disturbed him. It should have been abandoned. The outside of the building looked like it had been forgotten for decades. But the lobby was immaculate. Dark wood paneling. Polished marble. Brass lamps. A massive chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals sparkling gently. A fire burned in the fireplace. The furniture looked old but expensive. There was even a piano in the corner. Daniel stared at it. The keys were moving. Someone was playing. But there was nobody sitting at the piano. Slow, delicate notes drifted through the lobby. Daniel backed toward the entrance. The doors slammed shut. He ran to them. He pulled the handles. Locked. "Hello." His voice disappeared into the enormous room. Then someone behind the desk spoke. "Good evening, Mr. Mercer." Daniel spun around. A man stood behind the reception desk. He was tall and impossibly thin. His skin was pale. His hair was white. He wore a black suit with a silver pocket watch. Daniel stared at him. "How do you know my name?" The clerk smiled. "We have been expecting you." "Who are you?" "My name is Elias." "How did you know my name?" Elias tilted his head. "Because you made the reservation." "I didn't." The smile disappeared. Elias looked down at a large leather-bound book lying on the desk. He opened it. Daniel Mercer. His finger moved down the page. Room 417. Daniel swallowed. "I didn't make a reservation." Elias looked up. "You will." A cold feeling passed through Daniel. "What does that mean?" "It means," Elias said quietly, "that you haven't arrived yet." Daniel frowned. "I'm standing right here." "No." The clerk looked toward the lobby entrance. Daniel followed his gaze. The doors were closed. Beyond the glass, rain fell across the parking lot. Then Daniel saw himself, standing outside, soaked. Walking toward the hotel, Daniel stared. The man outside looked exactly like him. Same jacket. Same face. Same flashlight. Same frightened expression. He walked up the steps, opened the door, entered, and disappeared. Daniel turned back toward Elias. The clerk was smiling again. "See?" Daniel couldn't speak. "You haven't arrived yet." The elevator bell rang. Ding. The doors opened. Inside was darkness. Elias picked up a brass key. A small metal plate hung from it. For 117. "Your room is ready." Daniel stared at the elevator. "I want to leave." "You can." "Then open the door." Elias shook his head. "That isn't how it works." "What doesn't?" "The hotel." The piano stopped playing. Silence filled the lobby. Elias leaned forward. Mr. Mercer, the hotel only keeps people who try to leave. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. What does it keep? Elias smiled. Guests. Room 417 was at the end of a long corridor. The carpet was red. The wallpaper was dark green. Portraits lined the walls. Daniel passed dozens of them. Men, women, children. Some looked like they belonged to the 19th century. Others wore clothes from more recent decades. He slowed beside one. A young woman stood beside a lake. The painting was dated 1931. Daniel looked at her face. She looked terrified. Not sad. Not angry. Terrified. He continued walking. Another portrait. 1958. A family of 4. The father. The mother. 2 children. All staring directly at the viewer. The father had no eyes. Daniel stopped. He looked closer. There were only smooth patches of skin where the eyes should have been. He stepped back. The corridor seemed longer than before. He hurried toward room 417. The key fit the lock. Inside was a luxurious bedroom. 4-poster bed. Writing desk. Fireplace. Bathroom. A large window overlooking the forest. Daniel immediately noticed something. The room was warm. Too warm. He closed the door. Locked it. Then pushed a chair beneath the handle. He checked the bathroom. Empty. Closet. Empty. Under the bed. Nothing. He returned to the window. There was no parking lot below. No driveway. No forest. Only darkness. A darkness so complete it looked solid. Daniel stepped away. The telephone on the bedside table rang. He jumped. It rang again. He picked it up. Hello. Silence. Then a whisper. Don't sleep. Daniel frowned. Who is this? Don't sleep. Who is this? The whisper became clearer. It's already sleeping. The line went dead. Daniel put the receiver down. The room was silent. Then something knocked on the other side of the wall. 3 times. Knock. 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 Daniel stared at the wall. Another 3 knocks. Then a woman's voice whispered, "Please." Daniel approached the wall. "Hello. Please. Are you in the next room?" "Yes." Daniel looked at the door. He could hear something scratching behind it. "What's your room number?" Silence. Then, 417. Daniel froze. He stepped backward. The voice came from inside his own room. "Please." Daniel turned. The woman was standing beside the bed. She was wearing a white nightgown. Her hair hung over her face. She was dripping wet. Water pooled beneath her feet. Daniel couldn't move. "Who are you?" She slowly lifted her head. Her face was Daniel's face. She smiled. "You're late." The lights went out. Daniel woke on the floor. Morning light streamed through the window. He sat up. His head throbbed. For several seconds, he couldn't remember where he was. Then he remembered the woman. He looked around. The room was empty. The carpet was dry. There was no water. No woman. The telephone sat quietly on the table. Daniel grabbed it. No dial tone. He tried the door. It opened. The hallway was empty. He hurried downstairs. The lobby looked exactly as it had the night before, except there were people now. Dozens of them. Guests sat in chairs, reading newspapers, drinking coffee, talking quietly. Daniel approached the reception desk. Elias was there. "Good morning. I need to leave." Of course. Elias smiled. The front doors are right there. Daniel turned. They were open. Sunlight poured through them. He almost laughed. He walked outside. The rain had stopped. The parking lot was empty. His car was gone. Daniel stared. Where's my car? Elias stood behind him. You arrived without it. I drove here. No. I drove here. Elias shook his head. You arrived alone. Daniel turned toward the road. It was gone. Where the driveway had been was a field of tall grass. No highway. No road. Nothing. He looked at Elias. Where am I? The clerk's expression became almost sympathetic. Mile 117. What does that mean? It means you're between places. Daniel felt his stomach turn. I want to go home. I know. When can I leave? Elias looked toward the clock. The hands were moving backward. After you've checked out. When? When the hotel is finished with you. Daniel spent the next 6 hours trying to find a way out. Every door led somewhere different. The kitchen led to a hospital corridor. The basement led to a forest. The second-floor stairwell opened into the lobby. A service elevator took him to the 4th floor. Every time he found an exterior door, it opened into another part of the hotel. Eventually, he discovered something. The hotel had more rooms than it had windows. He counted. There were 417 rooms, but the building contained only 96 windows. That night, Daniel found the guest registry. It sat beneath the reception desk. He opened it. Names filled the pages. Hundreds. Thousands. Dates stretched back to 1889. Some entries were decades apart. Some were written yesterday. He searched for his name. There it was. Daniel Mercer, room 417, August 13, 2026. Below it was another line. Departure. Pending. Daniel turned the page. The next name made his blood run cold. Daniel Mercer, room 417, August 14, 2026. He turned another. Daniel Mercer, room 417, August 15, 2026. Another. Daniel Mercer, room 417, August 16, 2026. His name continued for pages. Weeks. Months. Years. He flipped forward faster. 2027. 2028. 2029. 2030. 2031. 2032. His hands began trembling. Then he reached the final page. There was only one entry. Daniel Mercer, room 417, December 31st, 2199. Underneath it, written in red ink, checkout confirmed. Daniel dropped the book. Something whispered behind him. You shouldn't read the registry. He turned. An old woman stood in the lobby. She looked to be 90 years old. Her face was covered in wrinkles. Her eyes were completely black. Who are you? She smiled. I've been here since 1962. How do I get out? You don't. There has to be a way. There was. What happened? She looked toward the elevator. We found the road. Daniel stared at her. What road? The road that leads away. And... Her smile vanished. It led back here. At midnight, the hotel changed. Daniel knew because the clock stopped. Every clock. Every watch. Every ticking mechanism. The hotel became silent. Then the walls began breathing. Slowly. The wallpaper expanded. Contracted. Expanded. Contracted. Daniel stood in the hallway. He could hear hundreds of people breathing behind the doors. Then every door opened at once. Guests stood inside. Men, women, children, all staring at him. Their faces were wrong. Some had too many eyes. Some had mouths that stretched across their entire faces. Some were missing features entirely. A little girl stepped into the hallway. She looked normal. Almost. Mr. Mercer? Daniel backed away. What? Are you ready? For what? She pointed toward the elevator. The doors opened. Inside stood every person Daniel had ever lost. His mother. His father. Old friends. People he hadn't seen in decades. People who were dead. His mother smiled. Come home. Daniel began crying. Mom. She held out her hand. I've been waiting. Daniel took one step toward her, then stopped. Something was wrong. His mother had died when he was 17. She had been buried. He remembered the funeral. He remembered touching her coffin. He remembered her face. But the thing in the elevator smiled exactly as she had. Too perfectly. Daniel whispered, What's my middle name? The woman hesitated. Daniel stepped backward. His mother's face twitched. Then the skin around her mouth split. Her jaw opened far too wide. The other figures began screaming. The elevator doors slammed shut. The entire hotel screamed with them. Daniel ran. He didn't know where. He ran through corridors that stretched impossibly far. Behind him came footsteps. Hundreds. Then thousands. The carpet became wet. Something warm splashed beneath his shoes. He looked down. Blood. He kept running. He reached a stairwell. Down, down, down. The stairs seemed endless. Behind him, something crawled along the ceiling. Daniel heard bones snapping. He didn't look back. He reached a door. Basement. He opened it. The room beyond was enormous. Machines covered the walls. Ancient boilers. Pipes. Electrical equipment. And doors. Hundreds of doors. Each one labeled with a room number. Daniel walked past them. 417. 418. 419. 420. Every door was room 417. He heard a sound behind one. A man's voice. Daniel. He stopped. It was his own voice. Daniel, please. He opened the door. Inside was another version of the hotel room. And another Daniel. He was sitting on the bed. Older. Much older. His hair was white. His face was thin. His hands trembled. How long have you been here? Daniel asked. The older man laughed. You're asking the wrong question. What? How long have I been here? Daniel stared. You're me. The older Daniel nodded. I was you. When? Tomorrow. Daniel felt sick. The older man stood. Listen carefully. What? The hotel isn't a building. What is it? It doesn't exist in one place. The older Daniel stepped closer. It's a mouth. Daniel stared. It appears when someone is lost. Why? It needs guests. What happens to them? The older Daniel looked toward the wall. They become the hotel. A deep rumble shook the room. The older man grabbed Daniel's shoulders. When you leave this room, don't trust anyone. How do I get out? Room 1. What? Find room 1. Where is it? The older Daniel smiled sadly. You'll know. The lights went out. When they came back on, the room was empty. Daniel found room 1 at dawn. It was behind the kitchen. There was no hallway leading to it. Just a single black door. The number 1 was carved into the wood. He opened it. Inside was his car, parked on a highway. Daylight. Blue sky. No rain. No hotel. Daniel stepped inside. His car keys were in the ignition. He got in. The engine started immediately. The road stretched ahead. A highway sign appeared. Mile 117. Daniel slammed on the brakes. He stared. The road ahead was empty. Then he looked in the rearview mirror. The hotel stood behind him, not far away, right behind his car. 4 stories of black brick. Every window filled with faces. Hundreds of faces. Watching him. Daniel hit the accelerator. The hotel remained the same distance away. He drove faster. 60. 70. 80. The hotel stayed behind him. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Mom. Daniel answered. Hello. Her voice was quiet. Daniel. He began crying. Mom. You shouldn't have left. The line went dead. The hotel disappeared. Daniel kept driving. For 3 hours. Eventually he reached a town. There were people. Gas stations. Traffic. Normal life. He pulled over. He went inside a diner. The waitress smiled. Passing through. Daniel nodded. Yeah. She poured coffee. You staying somewhere? Daniel looked out the window. No. The waitress frowned. You should be careful. Why? She pointed toward the highway. The Blackwood Hotel is around here somewhere. Daniel froze. What? She laughed. Old place. Been closed for years. Where? She shrugged. Nobody knows. Daniel looked back outside. The road was empty. Then he saw a car approaching. An old sedan. Pulled into the parking lot. The driver's door opened. Daniel watched the driver step out. It was him. Another Daniel. The man walked into the diner, sat at the counter, and ordered coffee. Daniel stared at himself. The other Daniel looked over, smiled, then whispered, You're late. Daniel left the diner. He drove until the sun disappeared. He drove until the fuel gauge reached empty. He drove until the road became gravel. And eventually, at 11:47 p.m., he saw the hotel again. The Blackwood Hotel waited beneath the trees. The driveway appeared beneath his headlights. The parking lot was full. Every driver's door was open. Daniel stopped the car. He didn't get out. He sat there for a long time. Then the hotel doors opened. A man stood beneath the awning. Elias. He raised one hand. Behind him, dozens of guests gathered in the lobby. Daniel recognized some of them. People from the paintings. People from the registry. People he had seen inside the hotel. And among them stood the older version of himself. The old Daniel looked directly at him. Then he lifted a brass key. For 117. Daniel looked down. There was a key in his hand. He didn't remember picking it up. The metal plate read, for 117. The clock on the dashboard changed. 11:46. Daniel looked at the hotel. 11:47. The doors opened wider. Warm light spilled across the rain. Daniel whispered, No. Something knocked on his passenger window. He turned. A woman stood outside. His mother. She smiled through the glass. Come inside. Daniel locked the doors. She leaned closer. Her face changed. Skin stretching. Eyes multiplying. Mouth opening. The thing outside screamed. The hotel screamed with it. Daniel started the engine, but the car wouldn't move. He looked down. His hands were gripping the steering wheel. His fingers had become pale, thin, almost transparent. He tried to pull them away. They wouldn't move. The dashboard clock began counting backward. 11:47. 11:46. 11:45. 11:44. The hotel doors opened completely. The interior was no longer a lobby. It was a gigantic darkness. Something inside breathed. Daniel finally understood. The hotel wasn't waiting for him to enter. It was waiting for him to become the man who opened the door for the next guest. His skin crawled. His bones began to ache. Something inside his chest moved. Once. Twice. Then a third time. Daniel screamed. The passenger door unlocked. It opened. Rain poured into the car. The darkness inside the hotel seemed to stretch across the entire parking lot, and Daniel felt himself being pulled toward it. Not physically. Something worse. His memories began disappearing. His childhood. His mother. His home. His name. Everything peeled away. He screamed his own name. Daniel Mercer. The hotel answered. Daniel Mercer. He screamed again. The hotel answered louder. Daniel Mercer. Again. Daniel Mercer. Again. Until the name no longer sounded like a name. It sounded like a room number. The final thing Daniel remembered was Elias standing beside the driver's door. The clerk leaned down. His face was almost kind. Welcome home. Then Daniel forgot what home was. The next morning, a truck driver traveling through the mountains noticed an old hotel beside the highway. He had driven the route for 20 years. He had never seen it before. The building was enormous. For stories. Dark brick. Stone columns. Gold letters above the entrance. The Blackwood Hotel. He slowed. A man stood in the doorway. Tall. Thin. White-haired. The truck driver rolled down his window. Hey! The man smiled. Good morning. Is this place open? Always. The driver laughed. Didn't know there was a hotel out here. There usually isn't. The driver looked at the sign. What room would you recommend? The clerk reached beneath the desk. He pulled out a brass key. For 117. Then he looked down at the registry. A new name had appeared. He ran one long finger beneath it. Daniel Mercer, August 14, 2026. The clerk smiled. Then he looked back toward the truck. Room 417. The truck driver parked. The driver's door opened. The hotel doors swung wide. And somewhere deep inside the building, a piano began playing. 3 slow notes. Then silence. Then, from somewhere upstairs, came the sound of a man whispering in the dark. Please. A pause. Don't sleep. And beneath the hotel, far below the basement, something enormous shifted in its sleep. Because the Blackwood Hotel had never been built. It had been found. And every few years, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, it appeared again. Waiting beside a road that had never existed. Waiting for someone to become lost. Waiting for someone to knock. Waiting for someone to come home. And once they did, the hotel remembered their name.